And Asanka, you can start recording. Chetana, I hope you are ready.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Hope we can start now. So, this is the fourth webinar organized by the Business Research Unit 2023. Throughout our webinar series, what we were talking about is the importance of publishing. From today's speaker, you are going to hear about the career benefits of bachelor research. So, this webinar series has the connection with the ICBR International Conference on Business Research 2023, which is falling on 4th of December. And we encourage all of you to submit your research works. Without being further delay, I invite Ms. Rajika to introduce our key speaker today. It's over to you, Ms. Rajika.
Thank you, Chetana. Good evening, all. Let me introduce today's speaker, Mr. Rajeev Karunanayake, to the audience. Rajeev graduated from University of Peradeniya in 2021 with BSc degree in engineering. He is a professional engineer with expertise in industrial and manufacturing engineering. Currently, he holds the position of National Logistic Manager at Unilever Sri Lanka, appointed under Future Leaders Program, where he oversees the logistic operations of Unilever Sri Lanka. Also, he has a strong background in Lean and Six Sigma, FMCG manufacturing, logistic management, supply planning, Industry 4.4, 4.0, and many more subject areas. It's a pleasure for me to introduce you to the audience, Rajeev. Over to you.
Thank you, Rajika. Thanks a lot for that introduction. Let me just first share my screen with you all so that y'all can hear me, right? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, Rajeev.
All right, super. Yeah, so hello everyone. So thanks for that introduction. And first of all, thank you. I thank everyone for joining. I know it's a Friday evening, and some of you all must be waiting to go back home, get back home, and some of you all might have had practices or whatever that you all do in the evening. So I appreciate that you all made the time to join this session, right? So let me first of all just give you another brief introduction. I would like to introduce myself in 3 different phases, because I think introducing myself in these 3 different areas, in these three different phases, would help me explain to you. It would help today's session, right? So first of all, I will talk about my roots, right? So my roots are from the University of Peradeniya, like Rajika rightly mentioned, and I studied industrial and manufacturing engineering. And so for today's session, this is where I would say, so this is where I basically did my bachelor's undergraduate degree, and this is also where I did my first research project and also my research thesis, right? And right now I work at Unilever, right? That is my present occupation. And it was right after university, it was my dream to join Unilever. It was an absolute dream. And I remember I didn't even apply to many other opportunities. I applied to 2 other opportunities. But right, like even when I was applying, I knew that I wasn't going there. Even before I got accepted by Unilever, I had already fixated, like I sort of like I just really wanted to join Unilever. So that was my dream. And then talking like a few months ahead, I will actually leave Unilever, sadly. Leave Unilever to pursue my higher studies. So I am planning to do my PhD. Again, a dream come true, right? Purdue, I got accepted to Purdue recently. I just told Dr. Prasanna. So just broke the news to him before this started. So that is basically me, and this is what I will rotate or sort of reflect on my experiences and how my final year research helped me get to my dream job and also get accepted to one of the best universities in the world. And it was also sort of my dream university because my uncle used to work here. So he studied here as well. So that is the approach that I will take, right? So first of all, I know that, of course, most of you all would know what a research is, right? But I would like to just set it clear, right? Just so that everyone's on the same page. Basically, a bachelor's research is it's a scientific study where the student, that is you, like we have 25 students here, so you take an active role to complete a research project or a thesis by exploring a specific area of interest, right? And ideally you get to work under the guidance of a faculty member or a supervisor, right? So my faculty member or my supervisor was Dr. Prasanna for my final year research. So I'm sure all of you would get a supervisor, right? And let's just quickly run through the different areas of bachelor's research, because I will be reflecting on how each particular area helped me in my career, helped me career wise, and also helped me when it came to applying to my higher studies, right? So first of all, we of course select a research topic, right? This is where we formulate a research question. We find a problem to investigate, right? So ideally, this has to be within your discipline. It has to be from an area that you are well conversant. Literature review, right? We do the literature review to understand the current knowledge gaps, right? And understand we do that too. We do a literature review to understand the current studies that have been done, right? And the existing literature, right? So that is usually the second step. And then after that, after doing the literature review, now we know the gap, now we know where we need to go, right? The gap that we have to bridge. So then we plan the research, right? We design the research. So for that, this is also a very interesting phase where there are different methodologies of conducting a research, right? And there are different ways of collecting data. So at this phase, in the third phase, you design your research. And then after that, you gather information, right? You gather data based on your research plan, and then you analyze this data, and then you interpret findings, right? And finally, you conclude, right? And you sort of draw and discuss implications and potential applications from what you have derived, right? From what you have understood, or from what you have found, right? And I have the last step. In the last step, I have also mentioned publication, right? Because I think it is part of publishing a research is part and parcel of doing the research. It's like the cherry on top, right? I'll talk about it in a few going forward, but there's a reason why I added the publication part also to the last step, right? So any questions? If anyone has questions, please do feel free to use the chat box, or just you can raise your hand, or you can also unmute and ask any questions, right? All right. So going forward, I will discuss certain things that certain decisions that I'm so glad I took, right? So similar to many experiences in life, similar to many things we learn in life, we learn things after experiencing certain things, right? After experiences, sometimes we feel like, oh yeah, we made the right decision. Sometimes we feel like yeah, we didn't do the right thing, right? And if you made the right decision, you feel so grateful. You feel like you got lucky. You feel grateful for the people who supported and pushed you to make that choice, right? So for me, like I said, it was Dr. Prasanna. And so he's the one, he was actually the one who guided me through the research, and he's also the person who pushed me to publish my research, right? So what I will talk about today, right, the experiences and whatever that I will share with you today are things that I have experienced, are things that I have gained by doing this research, right? So it's basically my personal experience. So I have broken it down to the different area, the different segments of research, right? That is first starting with selecting the research topic, right? So here, like I said, it's very important. So when you start a research, it has to be something, it has to be from your discipline, right? It has to be something that you're really interested in, right? So it's and for me, at the point when I selected my final year research, I didn't really think too much about my long-term goals, or I didn't think too much about how my research would help me land on my dream job, or how my research would help me get accepted to one of the best universities in the US, right? I sort of got lucky, but one thing that I did, one right thing that I did, something that I'm glad I did. So I selected a research topic that I was really interested about, right? So just to tell you a small story. So at the University of Peradeniya, we have, in our third year, we do a research project, and in our fourth year, we do like we have to write a thesis, right? So the research project and the thesis, they're two different courses, right? And we were actually, in a third year, I completed my research project on traceability, and it was a traceability solution. It was myself and another friend. And then when I came into my fourth year, and I had to do the research, when I had to write a thesis on a research, I had to conduct research and do a thesis. Myself and my friend, we wanted to do something different, right? Although the faculty suggested that we continue the same project that we did, although the faculty sort of suggested that we develop or build our research on the same project that we did in our third year, myself and my friend, we sort of took a bold decision to do something else. So means we had to do the literature review from scratch. We had to select a topic, and we had to find the we had to sort of formulate the research problem. So we had to do all the initial work that goes into doing a research all over again for a new topic, right? But I'm glad we did that, because later the research topic that we selected was relating to lean. It is I'm assuming that since you're all from a business background, you all would know about lean management. So it was a research topic that revolved around lean and Industry 4.0, right? So number one, at this point, by selecting the research topic, I got the opportunity to follow my passion, right? The passion for lean came during during the lean course that we took at university, right? And again, Dr. Prasanna did that course to us, found it very interesting, and therefore we decided we wanted to do something relating to that. And later did we realize that doing my research on this area really helped me build my career. It really supported me to sort of land on my dream job, because it was an actual gap that existed in the industry, right? So I don't know what future goals you all have, right? You all might, some of you all might want to join in industry, some of you all might want to pursue your higher studies, and even when you join an industry, you all might have different areas that you would want to pursue. But please do, when you do select a research topic, please do understand the industry gaps, right? what like and if you can focus your research on an industry gap, that is something you can leverage in the future, right? Because at the end of the day, once you're done with this research, right, you become you become an expert on that area, right? And by being an expert on an area, on a certain problem, or on a certain area which the industry actually needs more studies on, needs more experimentation on, right, needs more research on, that gives you an extra edge, right? That leverages you, right? That gives you a lot of value, right? So that is so those are like two benefits, like two things that I gained from like selecting the right research topic, right? I got, number one, I got to follow my passion, and number two, I became an expert in a chosen field, right? And also I would like to mention how like to tell you, I was like so interested, I actually read a whole book before I did my research. I actually read a whole book on lean manufacturing, right? So it's a book by Jeffrey Liker. It's an amazing book. It's called The Toyota Way. So so it was during this time I actually invested myself into learning, right? And somehow that has been one of my core strengths. Like even when I joined Unilever, I was once a production manager, right? A shift manager, right? So during this time, I worked hand in hand with the factory, in the factory floor, and all this knowledge that I gained, right, during the initial understanding and the reading that I did really helped me, sort of strengthen my career and really be in control of my role, right? And then moving into the literature review, right? So this is the second part. Like I mentioned, this is the second part in a research, right? Now, a literature review, of course, would give you a lot of well, I feel like this is a segment where you learn a lot, right? You learn a lot in the sense you gain a lot of research skill, right? So I've said master the art of processing information. Why? Because when you do a research, right, and you do a literature review, right, I'm sure those who have done a research would know, right? Or when you all start doing a research, you would have, there is so much information out there. There is so much of researchers, there are so many articles, and so many different experiments and so many different conclusions derived, right? So it is actually a skill to sort of read through this critically, right, and synthesize all this information, right? And it's a skill to identify what's relevant, right, and understand what's not. And so basically, I remember when we started doing a research, right, we reviewed over 20 to 30 research papers, right? Or I think more than 30 research papers. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy to go through all these research papers. And we also have like very little time, limited time. We're doing this while we're at university, right? So at first it took a long time, right? But later, as we sort of when we went past the mark of 10 to 15 research papers, we got the hang of it, right? And we learned how to skim through the information and absorb what's most important, right? And see, this is a very important skill in life, I would say, because even when I even when I work in a professional capacity, right, we are loaded with a lot of information. We're loaded with a lot of information, and it actually takes some effort, and it takes a certain amount of skill to process this information and understand what's most important, right? It takes some it takes a lot of skill. It takes a certain level of skill to grab what's important, right? And also it also helped me during my CIMA exams, right? That is another area. So I'm also doing CIMA, right? I completed it recently, but those who have done CIMA know that there are case studies, right? And in these case studies, again, we have a load of information through which we need to skim through and get understand what's most important, right? And sort of summarize these information, right? So these skills really help me, right? The skill of critical reading, the skill of synthesizing information, and to the ability to identify what's most relevant, right? And then number two, it helps you become an expert. Like I said before, you learn so much from the existing research, right? It's so interesting. Once you start doing your literacy review, you would understand. And again, like I keep pondering on the fact that you need to select a research topic that you're interested about, so that you would be tempted to read through, like you'd be more motivated to read through all these literature, right? So once, like right after, after we were done with the literature review, my knowledge on industry 4.0 and lean expanded so much, right? And not just in a one-dimensional way. It was sort of a diversified knowledge that I gained, right? And that will happen to you as well, right? So depending, based on whatever the research topic you select, after the literature review, you get so much of a diverse background on this specific area of research that you would like to pursue, because you read research papers from different researchers from different industries and different parts of the world, right? So the way they look at industry 4.0, the way they look at lean, I'm relating to my research, they were very different, right? So it sort of changed my thinking from a linear way to a more diversified way, right? So, and it sort of, I feel like it made me a professional in a field even without experiences, right? Because most of the research papers that I read were based on in the studies in the industry. They were based on experiments, right? And so by reading all these, by going through how the data was collected, by going through how these data was analyzed, and by understanding the different conclusions these researchers arrived at, right? It sort of gave me an overall idea on what to do, what not to do, right? And it actually excited me. I was so excited to sort of get into the industry, right? And really experience this, to understand if these are actually true, or to understand if to understand if what was mentioned in these researchers are actually are they different to how it happens in Sri Lanka, right? So the literature review, like I said, number one, it gives you a lot of very important skills. Just to reiterate these skills, the skill of being able to read through something very critically, right? The ability to synthesize information, right? That is to make sense of a lot of information, right? And the ability to identify and summarize what's most important, right? These are skills that you would not gain otherwise, right? And these skills helped me a lot. They still help me a lot. Even when I work, like I said, I have a whole lot of information and a lot of data that gets flooded into my emails. I get reports, and this skill that I gained during my bachelor's research really did help me perform at my best, right? And so this is a skill that so, and for that, actually it's very important that all of y'all do your research, the literature review properly, the right way. I'm sure, like I said, y'all would have someone to guide you, so do it the right way. Right now, of course, we have tools like ChatGPT, tools that would summarize and give you a summarized version of all these researchers, right? The summarized version of all this literature. But I urge you to not do that, right? Because the skills that you gain by taking that trouble, putting that effort to survey through the literature, right? To go through the literature review really gives you a lot of skills that you would not gain otherwise, right? So that's about literature review, right? And then let's talk about designing your research, right? So during this phase, so there are different ways of doing research, right? So this planning, the planning part of the research is very interesting because it's like planning a mini project, right? You have a research problem, right? You understand the gaps within the industry. You understand what sort of information and what sort of research is done already, right? And then you see what is the best way to approach this, what's the best way to tackle this problem, right? So you might have a tight timeline, right? Some of you all might have a budget, right? If you all have to do experiments, or you never know, right? You might have a budget, and for us, of course we did not have a budget, but we definitely we encountered a lot of constraints, right? We hit a lot of road bumps, we hit a lot of bottlenecks, right? And we always had to, I remember, we felt like we had everything sorted, right? We felt like we had a proper solid plan, and that we would really, excel at this research. But down the line, when we start to collect data, right, or when we start to analyze data, we felt like, oh, we need to change something, right? So we had to go back to the drawing board and reiterate this, right? So again, these are skills that I mean, number one, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And number two, it's sort of it's like it gives you a lot of managerial skills, right? How do you work with the budget? How do you work with the crunch timeline? How do you, how do you go back to the drawing board, and how do you sort of get over these constraints and bottlenecks, right? So these are things, these are skills that that has helped me professionally as well, right? And then, of course, applying research skills in the real world, right? So this is about the different approaches of research, right? Can someone tell me, so there are three types, there are three approaches, there are three commonly known approaches for a research, right? So I would say one is abductive, right? Can someone tell me the other two? Someone who knows, if you all know. One is abductive approach. What could be the other? What are the other two approaches? You all can use the chat. All right. So since we're running short of time, since we only have another 25 minutes, I will go ahead. I just wanted this to be a little interactive, but that's fine. So we have abductive, inductive, and deductive, right? So three different approaches, commonly, generally speaking, right? So I personally, when I work at Unilever, when I encounter problems, when I encounter situations where I need to think logically, right? When I encounter situations where I have to make sense of information and derive a conclusion, I usually go to these methods, right? So for an example, if it's abductive, right, you sort of get the best possible explanation, or you get the best possible conclusion from the information you have, right? And if you take a inductive approach, right, then you sort of derive a general conclusion from very specific observations or very specific information we have. And if it's deductive, it's sort of the other side of it, right? You derive a specific conclusion from general principles. So these skills, actually, I mean, you don't have to like technically use the word for it, but when you do a research, you tend to think in certain ways, right? You become a natural problem solver, right? Because like I said before, when we did our research, right, halfway through, we felt like, okay, this should not be the approach because we don't have this information, or we have this bottleneck. Then we change our way of, approaching this problem. So this training, I mean, you practically experience this when you do a research, right? If you do the research the right way. So and this training, this way of thinking, sort of you carry it with you, and I carried it with me to my work, right? And I don't use specific methodologies, but when I make a decision, when I make a logical inference at work, then I sort of know how to look at these problems, right? So these are things that you would gain, and these are things that you would learn when you do a research, right, in this design phase. And then coming on to the fourth part, right, the data collection and analysis. So this I cannot stress you. I mean, I can't stress the importance of this much more, because you all know that no matter what industry you're in, no matter in what career path you're in, data is key, right? There is so much of data out there. There is so much of information out there, but very little people make use of it, right? And right now, Sri Lanka is sort of in a transition where we are we're automating a lot of things, a lot of industries. We are moving into digitization, and with that also there is like there's a load of data coming out, right? So if you want to, like, if you're going into an industry, whether it could be a finance job, it could be an engineer, you could be a marketing job, but we all work with data, right? So it's very important to know how to handle data. It's important to know how to make sense of data, right? So by the data collection and analysis part of a research, right, you learn different ways of analyzing data. You will learn different ways of making sense of data. You learn how to structure unstructured data and, you know, deriving like interpreting this information, right? So for an example, you could there are statistical methods, there are qualitative methods, right? I mean, knowing to differentiate what quantitative data from qualitative data alone, that's a skill, right? So understanding data and working with data, it's very important, right? And these are skills that you would gain by doing a research, right? And of course, for me personally, you know, you might not use specific techniques or specific principles that you use during your research, right, when you come to work, but that sense of understanding data, the sense of being able to sort of decode and like structure data comes very handy, you know, when you go to a real world and when you work in an organization, right? And then again, it helps you when you do the data collection and when you analyze the data, it helps you think sharp, and you know, it helps you think critically, right? Like I said, interpreting data and interpreting results, you need to think in a certain way, right? You have to be you have to know how to identify trends and patterns, right? And you have to know how to draw meaningful conclusions, right, based on evidence. And you have to know how to understand correlations of data sets, right? So again, like I said before, this phase of our project really helped us do that. Because for an example, one thing, like I remember we gathered data from different sources, right? And we had a problem, like we had an issue as to whether we can collate this data. Can we consider this data together, right? So we had different techniques to understand if these two data sets, if these two samples could be combined together, right? And so these are I mean, we've learned these during us in our statistic modules, right, in our statistics courses. But when you but during this research, we actually got to practically implement it, right? And that's when we really understood the actual use of this, right? That's when we understood the importance of statistics, right? So again, you know, by doing your research, you would also strengthen your theory and your core knowledge, right? Especially on statistics, because in this particular stage, when you collect data, you use a lot of statistics, right? So that has helped me a lot. And of course, connecting with professionals. when we collected data, of course, we had interviews, and we had discussions with a lot of high profile and even board level members, right? We had meetings with companies like MAS, Unilever, Deliveroo, and Ansell, Ceylon Cold Stores, and we sort of we had the opportunity to talk to them and present to them our idea and also get their understanding. And it was amazing. It was amazing because we were all like-minded. It was amazing to connect with like-minded people, right? And it definitely expanded my contacts. I still keep in touch with them. We are still connected through LinkedIn, right? And you never know how these connections and these networks that you gain, like for me, these connections, like I'm a person who really values networks and connections. So you never know how these would play out in future, right? So depending on your research, I don't know, for me, of course, during the data collection process, I connected with a lot of professionals and like-minded people, and that I think that I'm very grateful for, right? And then coming to the last element of it, right? The last part, conclusion, implications, and publication, right? So now, the reason why I included publication at this point is because I can see, it's like doing a research and not publishing it is like running a marathon and not crossing the finishing line. It's like climbing a mountain and not planting that flag on the top, right? You need to take ownership of what you did, and with that ownership, right, because you've put in a lot of effort, right? You put in a lot of effort, and you, like, depending on your research, you might have you know you might have discovered, or you might have your research, your research would, like, there's a lot of potential in your research to go a long way, right? Like, for an example, I'll just give you a few examples of advantages of why you need to publish work, right? Number one, I would say it gives you academic recognition, right? Whether you want to be an academic or whether you want to join the corporate, it's a decision that you might feel like you have already made the decision. As for me, I never wanted to pursue higher studies. It is something, it is an interest. It is a decision that I made later in my life, right? Initially, I just wanted to join the corporate, right? I wanted to do a job, right? I wanted to implement what I've learned. But later on in life, you never know where you would go, right? So having an academic recognition, having that credibility and recognition within the academic community is very important, and you publishing your research work would give you that, right? And also, and even if you want to join a company, right, even if you want to go to the corporate, like, it also helps you with career advancement, right? Because having published research on your CV, on your resume, it really strengthens it, right? It adds color, and it shows that you are an expert in a certain field, right? And it also opens doors to sort of network with researchers who have similar interests, right? Because when you publish it, other researchers who might be interested in whatever the area that you have done your publication in, they might try to reach out to you, right? That's how you make connections, right? And then and if you want to apply to a higher education, like if you want to pursue your higher studies, right, going forward, publishing a research would also improve the chance of securing research grants or funding, right? Because why? Because whoever grants a fund, or grants a fund, would need that confidence, right? Would need that confidence that you demonstrate potential, to deliver impactful research outcome, right? So if you have done a good research, a proper research, that would solidify your chances, that would strengthen your chances of finding funding if you want to sort of pursue your higher studies, right? And another one thing that I would like to talk about is my own experience publishing the research. Again, initially, right after our research, right after university, we had I personally had no intent of publishing the research, but it was again Dr. Prasanna who pushed me to publish it. And right now, I am so grateful that he pushed me to do it, because with that publication, I got a lot of opportunities. It opened a lot of doors to me, right? I will talk about it in the next couple of slides on how publishing my research helped me, right? And then also during the same conference organized by the University of Moratuwa, we also won the award for the best research paper, right? And it's just really satisfying. It's satisfying because you put in a lot of effort, right? You put in a lot of effort, and when you see how your efforts and what you have worked on is recognized like this, it's sort of it makes you happy, right? So and also one thing, and also during the research conference, one thing I really loved was the question and answer session, right? During the question and answer session, it gave me confidence that I have actually learned what this is about, because the questions were asked by like actual well read professors and people from the industry, right? And I understood when we were talking to them, like after presenting our research to them, I understood that we have actually done a research on an actual problem that they had, right? So, and they discussed it with us, and they sort of gave us suggestions, and they asked our perspective on certain things. And because we were so invested on this research, because we actually put an effort and understood and really took the right steps to collect data and analyze and come up with inferences, we were able to like answer them so confidently. And and they were also like really like they were actually impressed with it, and impressed with us as well. So again, this is how you make connections, right? And right after right after this Mercon conference, I also connected with them on LinkedIn, and and again I still keep in touch with them. So so these are these are things that you gain out of a research conference. And I personally am so grateful that I published my research. Not my research, actually, I did it together with another friend of mine. And what I have gained out of this research and by publishing the research is immense, right? So this is about, so these are the 5 steps. This is what I've learned during the 5 stages of my research, right? And next we have another 10 minutes, right? So I will dive into how I landed on my dream job at Unilever, right? I wouldn't say the research directly helped me to get this job, but it definitely helped me in very crucial and very important times, right? So number one, see, when you applied, this is sort of a when undergraduates, like when my juniors come to me and talk about like interviews and finding jobs, I mean, they say that they're fine, some say that they're struggling to find jobs. One thing I tell them is that they need to be an expert on a certain field, right? Because most of us, few of us would want to be academics, and few of us would want to join a corporate or do a job, right? So like enter the job market. But when you enter the job market, right, you know that a lot, like almost everyone who apply would have some degree or some course or some level of higher education, right? So their profiles would more or less be the same, right? So what you need to understand, what you need to think is, how do you stand out? How do you make yourself stand out, right? How do you make your, how do you, how would they, like, would they see you as a special person, right? And for me, because I did this research, I was able to portray and present myself as a expert in lean and industry 4.0, right? And these are areas that are highly like that, and like especially Unilever. When it comes to Unilever is like, they right now they invest a lot on digitization, and they try to make their processes very much more efficient. So it gave me value, right? Knowing, like, being an expert in this particular area due to this research, it gave me value, right? And also I had the confidence and the knowledge to back it up, right, when I went to the interview. So I will just give you an example, right? So when I joined Unilever, it was a very rigorous interview process. I had to go through 6 stages of interviews, and the last stage was an interview with the director of supply chain, right? He was an Indian at the time, and so he looked at my CV, right? And he directly, the only thing we spoke about was actually 90% of what we spoke about was my research, right? Research project. Actually, it wasn't a research thesis that I wrote. It was a research project that I did in my 3rd year, right? So and I knew all about it. So I was able to go, I went to town with it, right? And I was so confident. I answered him confidently, and then he asked me a trick question, right? He asked me a trick question. So he asked me what constraints we faced, what couldn't you do during this research, what couldn't you accomplish, right? And I knew that as well, right? Because we had to write a report, and I told them that these are the constraints, this is what we couldn't do, these are the things that are not feasible when it comes to implementing a traceability system. That was the research project we did. And after that question, after I mapped out all the constraints, he told me, I'll give you 1 minute. I'll give you 1 minute. And he told me to come up with a strategy, right? He told me to come up with a solution that would overcome the constraints or the bottlenecks or the things that were not feasible that I just mentioned, right? So he basically told me to come up with a concept that would eliminate all the problems, eliminate all what we couldn't do during the research, right? But luckily, while I was doing I remember that during my literature review, right, there was this one article, research paper that I read about blockchain, right? And in that particular research paper, that research paper highlighted how blockchain, it's used for cryptocurrency, but it also highlighted how it can be used in the supply chain for traceability. But right now it said that it did not have the capabilities, or it wasn't that feasible, but it was a concept that they highlighted, right? And that is exactly what I spoke about, right? I spoke about blockchain, and I told him how it is not feasible, but it is actually a solution that can be implemented, right, to get rid of these problems that I just highlighted, right? So needless say, that interview went super great, right? And for me, and all thanks to the research I did, right? And so I'm just saying, you never know how, there are certain points in life where things you do would come in handy. And for me, it came in handy during the final stage of my interview journey of getting into Unilever, and it really paid off, right? So that is how my research helped me get into Unilever, right? And now finally, I'll talk about my dream, the dream that came true, the dream of pursuing my higher education at Purdue. It's one of the top universities in the US. It like in 2021, it ranked 3rd in production and operations management. So I'm going to do a PhD on supply chain and operations. And how did I get accepted to Purdue, well, any university, when they look at PhD students, there are certain skills that they expect, right? Research skills, right? Let me list a few research skills. You have to have, strong research skills, and that's very fundamental to a PhD student. And then you have to be able to think critically. I just highlighted the importance of it and how your research would help you think critically, right? So PhD students should be able to assess complex problems. They have to be analytical, right? They have to be proficient in data analysis, interpreting, and they also have to be able to tackle research challenges. They have to be able to collaborate and network with people. They have to be able to, their communication has to be, they have to be, they also have to have good communication skills. So these are sort of skills that universities look at when they when they accept students, PhD candidates, right? And how do we give them the confidence that we are students of that caliber, right? You just saying that you're a problem solver, that you have that you can decipher complex problems and all of that, that would not convince a university that you have the skill, you have what it takes to be a PhD candidate, right? Because they spend a lot of a PhD or master's, if you're looking for a scholarship, it's a big investment they make on you, right? So you need to have something that would really convince them that, look, this student is a person who has the skill set that we look for, right? And there is no better way of convincing them. There is no better way of telling them that you're a good candidate, you're a good PhD candidate, than having a research published under you, right? And so there are three ways of convincing a university that you are a good candidate, right? Number one would be your SOP, right? That is your statement of purpose. Number two would be the recommendations you receive. And number three would be the papers you have published, right? I will start with the first one. Yes, I have a question for master's programs. Yes, depends. Some master's programs are they also do have a thesis. There are two types of master's programs: professional master's programs and thesis master's programs. So especially when it comes to thesis master's programs, these are the programs that are funded, right? And they also look into the same skill sets, right? And I was saying, SOPs very important, right? In the statement of purpose, I started my statement of purpose by highlighting the research I did at university and how that research motivated me to pursue a career in supply chain management, and then how I understood the reality in the industry, and I wanted to pursue further studies, right? So that was my story. That was the story I mentioned in my SOP. So that reflected that I have actually done a research, and that through my research, I actually it showed how my research sort of led me into the need to pursue further studies, right? And then recommendations. Recommendation letters are very important, and most universities, they ask for at least 3 recommendation letters from lecturers, right? Lecturers or places you have worked at, right? They prefer recommendation letters from the recommendation letters. Letter is an amazing way for your lecturer to tell the university how much the skills that you have, the skills that you would bring into that university, right? And for me, Dr. Prasanna wrote me a recommendation letter, and in that he highlighted how I worked under him during the research, and how I showed how he just highlighted the skills, the analytical skills, the critical thinking skills, the research skills, and the communication, the writing. And research, if you did not do your research properly, the right way with your supervisor, I mean, you might not be able to get a good recommendation from him, right? So number 2, recommendations. Then number 3, the papers published, right? Just I want to stress on this. You need to publish your paper for it to be accepted by the university as a research, right? Because I remember I applied to like 6 universities, right? All six universities in the application form, it mentioned they asked if we have done a research, if we have published a research, and they only asked for the publication link, right? There was no place to upload the research that you have done, right? So that is why again, I would like to highlight the importance of publishing your research. It's very important. It gives a lot of credibility, right? Unless you have published your research, you cannot really you cannot mention that you have that you have written a research paper, right? Because there was no place to upload a research paper. There was only a space to upload a research link, right? Mention a research link. So I feel like these are things that help me. These are the 3 things that help me get into Purdue, right? So for me, definitely, I only did 1 research, by the way, right? I only published 1 research paper, and I would actually push you. I would suggest that if you all have the time, having 2 or 3 research papers, that will be great. But start with 1, right? Something is better than nothing. And that 1 research paper, for me, it took me a long way, right? It got me into my dream job at Unilever. And after that, it got me into one of my dream university to pursue my higher studies. So that is how my final year bachelor's research publication helped me. That is how it guided me through life, from university to work to higher education. So, and that is what I wanted to share with you, right? I'm sorry I sort of rushed through the whole presentation. I usually,
No.
yeah.
No, that's really fine, really fine,
Yeah.
Rajeev. With that, Rajeev, thanks a lot for the informative and very inspiring talk today. So you highlighted a lot the importance of publishing the research work and how that guide you to the next big steps of your life. Thank you, Rajeev. And I hope you will join us in future with more expertise and experience with your area.
Thank you.
So with that, students, do you have any question to ask from Mr. Rajeev? So it's the time if you have any questions to ask.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer questions. You
Yeah,
can
please ask. Yeah,
yeah.
it'll be a great for you to kind of get the information about how you kind of go with the publications with the undergraduate research. So please ask any questions.
You can either use the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. Yeah.
Okay, Raju, so then one question from me. So I noticed sometimes the undergraduate students feel that their research is not that much good enough for a publication. So that's kind of one question the students ask me, oh, is it okay to publish the undergraduate research? So can you give any kind of tips to encourage such students and overcome their thoughts to submitting their work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was one of those kids, right? When
Okay.
when we completed our final year research, right?
Yeah.
We had, like I said, I had no intention of publishing it. Myself and my friend had no intention of publishing it. But ultimately, Dr. Prasanna pushed us to publish it, right? He actually nagged us so much for so long. And he's the one who pushed us to publish it, right?
Yeah.
And we actually thought that our research wasn't
That much good
sort of,
enough.
yeah,
kind
deep
of-
enough and good,
Yeah.
good enough. And
Yeah.
we didn't think that people would value it, right?
Yes, true.
But once we published it at Mercon, we ended up winning the we even won an award in our segment. We won the award of the best research paper in our segment. And also I mentioned during the question and answer section, we realized the importance, how important
Yes.
our research was for certain people, right?
Yes.
So your research, depending on your area, depending on the research you did, it might not be important for everyone, but there would always be someone who would really value your
Brilliant.
research,
Yes.
right?
True.
So it doesn't have to be accepted by everyone, but believe me, someone would really value your research. And even if it's a preliminary study, it will always be a foundation for someone else to build on it later on,
Yes. True.
right? So yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Rajeev. Thank you. Thank you for that tip. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So any questions from you students? Okay. Okay, so then with that, we hope that we can end the session. So first of all, we thank a lot to our key speaker today, Mr. Rajeev Karunanayake, for accepting our very short notice invitation and giving our students an interesting talk on how to be successful with the bachelor research and how it will guide you to the next path of your career and life. So we hope this talk will be very useful one for you students when you're going to start your bachelor research as the first research study. And also, Rajeev, we congratulate on your next big step of pursuing your PhD at Purdue University in United States, and all the best too. And secondly, we thank all our audience for joining the webinar and we hope you find the webinar informative and inspiring. Before ending this session, so let me remind you again about ICBR 2023. So as you know, the deadline for the abstract submission is on 20th June 2023. So to get more information about the submission, please visit the official webpage of ICBR 2023. There you will find all the details about the conference, including guidelines for abstract submission and the abstract template. And if you have any questions regarding the submission process or any other relevant questions, please contact us via icbr@uom.lk. Yeah, so with that, we would like to end the session for today. Hope to meet you all with the next webinar from Business Research Unit. And thank you all and have a nice evening and weekend. And same to you, Rajeev.
Thank you.
And yes,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay,
Good
thank
night.
you. Thank you so much. Okay.